I know. It's Good Friday, and I want to know what is so fucking good. If you're in Paris and you're a Catholic, it isn't real good, you know? Timing not real good for the major church to burn to the ground, you know? But here we are, it's Good Friday, and you know what that means. It's time for another disgusting episode of Moohead Radio. And really, there's a lot of things that I had planned to talk about today, but I realize that the only people who will be here are godless heathens. Hence the reason I'm here and the reason Roxanne's here.
Oh, say it isn't so.
Say it isn't so.
It isn't so. Oh.
Yeah, there you go. And Brian says the commie hunter. He's going to be here because we know that he's a godless heathen. Rick is not going to be here. So, and viewership is going to be very low today because everybody's pretending that they're good people and religious people. Well, to each of you, if you are a fake good person who's hiding behind their religion, fuck you. Okay, we'll get on with the program.
Brittany acknowledges that she's a heathen.
Good. I like heathens. This is a story that is of real interest to me. If you grew up in my parents' generation, there is one version of God Bless America. Who sang God Bless America?
I don't know.
See, that's the problem with you young folks. You don't remember. But that so much a tradition. Kate Smith sang, God bless America. Yeah. And you'd hear it at sporting events. In fact, two teams, the New York Yankees and the hockey's Philadelphia Flyers, have played her version of God Bless America during games. And it's been part of the history of those franchises to keep that performance alive. In fact, the woman herself was very closely aligned with the Philadelphia Flyers, the hockey league team. She actually performed God Bless America before Flyers games in the 1970s. A year after her 1986 death, the team even erected a statue in her honor outside of its arena. Now the team won't play her version of the song ever again and is covering up her statue.
Why?
Oh, because, get this. We have recently become aware that several songs performed by Kate Smith contain offensive lyrics that do not reflect our values as an organization, the Flyer said. As we continue to look into this serious matter, we are removing Kate Smith's recording of God Bless America from our library and covering up the statue that stands outside of our arena.
Can they have that same standard for Madonna?
Well, wait a minute. The Yankees said the team also was no longer playing the song. It had been a fixture at games since the September 11th, 2001 attacks, the team said. Now, here's the reason. The controversial songs. This is the name of the song. That's why darkies were born. Okay?
Well, damn.
Okay. But I want to read the lyrics of the song. This was 1931 that she recorded this song, right? The song was written by two very famous songwriters of their era, Ray Henderson and Lou Brown. It originated in a musical called George White's Scandals of 1931. It was most famously recorded by Kate Smith, whose rendition was a hit in 1931, and by black man Paul Robeson. It also was featured in a 1931 All-Star recording of a medley of songs from that musical. Here
are some of the lyrics.
Okay, good. I'm going to read them to you. And the song I can't play for you, but I urge you to look it up. It is a blues kind of sad, morose song, right? And it is meant to be sung by a black person. That's why Paul Robeson, the person who made Old Man River famous from the musical, the original musical Showboat,
Hmm.
Yeah, he sang it first. Lyrics. Someone had to pick the cotton. Someone had to plant the corn. Someone had to slave and be able to sing. That's why darkies were born. Someone had to laugh at trouble, though he was tired and worn. Had to be contented with any old thing. That's why darkies were born. Sing, sing, sing when you're weary, and sing, sing when you're blue. Sing, sing, that's what you're taught. That's what you taught all the white folks to do. Someone had to fight the devil and shout about Gabriel's horn. Someone had to stoke the train that would bring God's children to green pastures. That's why darkies were born. Right?
Okay.
Right. And it's perfect that you're here for the show, Roxanne, obviously, because you have some interest in this, I'm sure. If you heard those lyrics, what would you think?
If I wasn't aware of the origins of that song, I would be offended by that. Yeah, especially, I mean, coming from 1931, I would think, well, that's a very racist attitude to have. But knowing that this song was meant to be sung by a Black person, I mean, I still think that there are some songs that are meant to be sung by Black people that white people just really, it wouldn't be a good idea for them to sing. But that was pretty standard, I think, back then for them to sing, for white people to sing songs that were meant for Black people to sing. And most songs that I've heard, probably, I mean, they wouldn't have the kind of reaction that this song would have, especially if heard nowadays. I can see why some people would take offense, but I think that people need to be educated about the origins of this song and make just really a more full decision when they just look at the full picture before making a decision such as that. I mean, I think that it would be a real shame to tarnish Kate Smith's legacy like that if this was not something that she intended to be as a hateful or racist act.
Well, and she's not here to defend herself. The other thing that's interesting, if we would have just isolated, take the line, colored folk work on the Mississippi, and take the song Old Man River with the dialect intact, the way it was written, the intentional mispronunciation of words that suggests a lack of erudition in education. If you called an African American a colored person today, you'd be in big trouble now, wouldn't you?
Maybe.
Maybe. But would we ban Frank Sinatra for singing it?
No.
All right. The problem, and I don't know what you think, Brian. Do you have a point on this, a point of view?
Well, only that put into the context of what this play was actually kind of encompassing. This was at an era of Jim Crow, Prohibition. The KKK was very much an active participant in the South, and so you were getting a lot of these kind of songs and plays and different things written. People were going on stage in blackface at vaudeville
Right.
in the heart of New York City. So
Jim Hammer is with us. Jim, do you have an opinion on this?
Well, first off, I'm really impressed that Lou Brown was able to both manage the Indians and help write this song. But on a serious note,
Big knock, big knock. Okay. Yeah.
But on a serious note, keep in mind this was 4 years after The Jazz Singer, in which, you know,
Al Jolson.
Al Jolson performed in blackface. It was a sign of the times. Does it make it right? Absolutely not. But it is what it was back then.
Let me ask you this: if knowing that the song came from a 1931 musical Follies, okay, and that Kate Smith sang the song and it actually charted at number 12 on the charts for 3 weeks back in 1931, does that make her a racist?
Not necessarily. I mean, back then she wouldn't have found it as offensive as people would find it these days. She may have just thought it was a beautiful song and thought it was appropriate to sing at that time. Maybe she changed her mind in later years when she used to sing "God Bless America." Maybe her mind had changed by then. But even when she sang it in 1931, I don't think that she was necessarily racist for singing it. And I think it's kind of unfair to paint her with that brush. But yeah, listening to it now, it's definitely offensive.
I mean, yeah. Oh, you're listening to the song?
Am I listening to it right now?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. I mean, yeah, in today's climate, I think virtually everything is offensive. I'm going to give you another example in just a minute because I think the score from the movie The Natural should be removed permanently. Here's a song Randy Newman wrote called Rednecks in 1970. I'm just going to read some of the lyrics. Last night I saw Lester Maddox on a TV show with some smart-ass New York Jew. And the Jew laughed at Lester Maddox, and the audience laughed at Lester too. Well, he may be a fool, but he's our fool. If they think they're better than him, they're wrong. So I went to the park and I took some paper along, and that's where I made this song. We talk real funny down here. We drink too much and we laugh too loud. We're too dumb to make it in no northern town, and we're keeping the niggers down. All right? That is Rednecks in 1970. Is that racist?
It would seem so until you get to the end of the song.
There you go.
That's why I talk about looking at the full context of something, because if you listen all the way to the end, instead of just reacting to what you hear at first, then you get a more full picture of what the intent was.
Yeah,
I mean,
wasn't Randy Newman basically making fun of them?
Yeah, well, no, he was actually not making fun of the Southerners. He was making fun of Northerners. All right. All right. And let me explain. Okay.
The guy that wrote Born in L.A.
No, I love LA. Yeah.
Or I Love L.A.
And that's the guy, Randy Newman, who wrote the da 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 from the
And
Natural.
Welcome Back, Cotter, and
No, Natural, the movie.
And Burn on Big
yeah,
River.
but he also
Burn
wrote
on.
Burn
he also
on,
did-
yeah, from Lou Brown's favorite movie. Yeah.
and he also did the theme for Welcome Back, Cotter.
No, that was John Sebastian. Just take my word for it. I know everything. Okay. Here's the deal. The rest of the lyrics of the I owe Randy Newman fans the full benefit of the doubt. Now, your northern nigger's a Negro. You see, he's got his dignity. Down here, we're too ignorant to realize the North has set the nigger free. Yes, he's free to be put in a cage in Harlem and New York City. And he's free to be put in a cage on the south side of Chicago and the west side. And he's free to be put in a cage in Huff and Cleveland. And he's free to be put in a cage in East St. Louis. And he's free to be put in a cage in Fillmore in San Francisco. And he's free to be put in a cage in Roxbury in Boston. They're gathering him up from miles around, keeping the niggers down. So if you give the song the benefit of the doubt, what he's really saying is the difference between the Northerners and the Southerners is that the Southerners might be blatant about their racism, but the Northerners are holier than thou, but they still stuff them in ghettos, okay? That's the point of the song. And if I'm reading the song, That's Why Darkies Were Born, it isn't like Eat That Chicken Pie. You can look that up on YouTube too, which is the most insulting, racist piece of shit that you'll ever want to hear. But
What year was that song?
I want to say in the 20s,
Okay.
late 20s. All right.
Again, the era of Jim Crow and
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
obviously these things were, but this particular song, it bothers me because it's like sing, sing, sing when you're weary and sing when you're blue. Sing, sing. That's what you taught all the white folks to do. Someone had to fight the devil. Shout about Gabriel's horn. Someone had to stoke the train that would bring God's children to green pastures. That's why darkies were born. Now, if you don't see the irony in that lyric, you're deaf. You're dumb and you're blind. Plain and simple. Now, the fact that you just don't refer to African Americans as darkies in 2019, I get that. But what a knee-jerk reaction when you've been playing this woman's version of God Bless America and you cover her statue. It's like, and nobody can defend themselves. Nobody can defend themselves against this. Randy Newman wrote the lyric, "Short people got no reason to live." Now, you could have a bunch of dwarves go out. I'm sorry, little people. I'm not allowed to call them that.
Even though their condition is called dwarfism.
That is correct. The fact is, little people would want Randy Newman tarred and feathered because you can't write "short people have no reason to live." It's inhumane and it is bigoted. At any rate, just another example of what happens.
Paul Williams, your thoughts?
A dwarf, okay? A dwarf.
Pretty much what we've uncovered is Randy Newman was a kind of a piece of shit, wasn't he?
No, I mean, but you have to understand singing, and he didn't love LA either. He writes songs in third person. Listen to the song "Political Science," and he's not espousing dropping nuclear weapons on people, but he's mocking the tone of people who believe.
No, that was Eric Swalwell.
Yeah, no, but he was mocking the tone of people back when the song was written. But be that as it may, I promised to talk about the Cleveland Browns, and so I shall. The Browns' 2019 schedule has been released, and we have a week-by-week understanding of what they're going to be facing. Before we get into the week-by-week quick analysis of the season, I wanted to point this out. In no way would I ever refer to African Americans in any other way except African Americans. Because in today's world, it's not worth anything. And I'll make fun of my raised religion, Judaism, and I will also make fun of priests, butt fucking altar boys. But besides that, well, I guess there are a few other things I would do too. Part of the point. Go ahead.
I'll tell you my grandmother's opinion on that. I remember her telling me years and years ago, I mean, she referred to Black people as colored people and would not call Black people Black. She found that offensive because she said that we come in many different colors. I mean, we come in yellow, red, brown, et cetera, and she found it offensive to refer to people as Black people. She felt that was limiting. So I am not offended personally when I hear the term colored people and some of the other terms that are not meant to be racist.
It was proper. It was proper lingo in the 60s before activism became all the rage. Colored people is what they were referred to post-World War II. I mean, but that was accepted in the Black community. This is
and the NAACP has colored people in it.
That's right. I mean, we have to
founded by a
understand.
Jew, by the way.
Yes, that's right. I mean, what it boils down to, the times that we're living in really puts a prism that we look through, and it's kind of hard to go back to 1931 and look through 1931's prism and then look through it in 2019's prism and come up with any real similarities between cultures. But what I can tell you is this: the less we talk about these things, for fear of offending people, the less progress we make. If we're so worried about whether we should call somebody Black or colored, if we have to watch ourselves to that degree, we're never going to really talk about things that actually matter.
Well, it's a safe bet that you can't call Black people darkies.
Obviously there is common sense involved in this, but to me, it's a non-starter in the sense that how are we going to talk about real problems if we can't even address one another? If we're afraid to address one another in a specific language, it is a frustrating time in which we live. I believe the Browns, by the way, are going to trade back up in this draft. The more I sit here and look, now that the schedule has come out, I'm absolutely convinced the Browns are going to trade up because they can get one more impact player. It is my belief that it's all in for 2019.
Think it might be a first rounder from next year or a future year.
I'm not sure what Dorsey is going to do, except I'm convinced he's going to trade back up. I think we've looked at some of the most bastardly schedules in the past several years. It's like, how can we end up being the worst team and end up with the hardest schedule? Well, it ain't that way this year. No matter what spin they're trying to put on this, the Browns' schedule is not nearly as hard as what it was last year. Now, some teams will become tougher than you think, and some teams will lay down and be devastated by whatever injuries. But really, if you look at the histories of the organizations that the Browns are playing, of course, we're always going to play teams in our division. We know who they are, and we know that we're playing the New England Patriots. We know that. And we know we're playing the Seattle Seahawks. We know that. And those are traditionally very good football teams. But at the same time, this may be the first season where week one, we're playing at home against a team we can beat, Tennessee Titans. And I always say, when the Browns are a young team growing up, it's like, it isn't so much how the season begins, but, how it ends. And last year was the perfect example. You didn't get off to a very good start, but man, when you win 6 of your last 7, that's the curve. And it just coincided with Wade Jackson being ousted. I wish he'd have been outed too, but ousted was good enough at the time. To me, the Browns had the arc of the proper season. They got their pieces in place and they got better as the season went on. But it ain't that way next year. Next year, this team is supposed to win because the pieces came together in the second half of last year. And it just doesn't make sense to me to trade down to get more lower picks when you're at this fork in the road. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense staying at 49, where obviously players that you want will already be off the board. If there's somebody the Browns want, they're going to move up and get him. And it may not be, I'm not talking about a Devin White kind of guy, because you're not going to be able to go up that high. But what I do believe is they're going to move up and get a player that they feel can impact in 2019. And all because all of this is within reach. The circumstances surrounding the Baltimore Ravens, the uncertainty of bringing Harbaugh back as the coach, the uncertainty of what kind of a quarterback Lamar Jackson will be if his running game gets stuffed, and how long he can function as a running quarterback. The question about the Steelers, about losing Le'Veon Bell and losing Antonio Brown, and what negative press could create and what kind of bad vibes, a bad start for the Steelers would bring out as far as Ben Roethlisberger's role and those players not deciding to come back. And then the Bengals, who just don't have a quarterback, and they're going to try to ride it out with Andy Dalton, and who really have so many holes to fill. The Browns are expected to step up, and the press is not doing anything to dispel that notion, nor is the NFL, predicated on 4 nationally televised games. The funny part of this is that, so that nobody will get offended with me, the Jewish part of me was upset. Do you realize that I'm paying the full price for the NFL Sunday ticket and 4 of the games I can get on my TV without the package?
Yep.
I want a discount, damn it. I want a discount. 4 times I'm going to come on national television and get this team for free. What do I have to pay for? Oy.
And is that including your Monday night and your Sunday night game too?
Yeah, it's 4
and
times.
Thursday night?
Thursday night. We're going to be all over the place on free television for me. And it's like, I'm paying full bore for the NFL Sunday ticket. It's like, they never showed the Browns before.
Plus, you got your noon Sunday game and you got your 3:15 whatever game they show.
Yeah, and for me, here's the deal. I understand. I have to pay extra to watch a lousy team. I'll pay. Yeah. But
Imagine
then-
having an MLB package, Mr. Muhead. You're watching like 30. I wonder how many of those games are even watched.
Yeah, I mean, all those teams. It's like, oh, and now that Chris Davis broke the 0 for 54, I'm not watching the Orioles anymore. You know.
Here goes. Get the MLB package where you can literally have no life and sit there all day for just a low price of $99.99 a month.
Yeah. Although they do, if you wanted to watch it online only, you can pick one team. You can pick the Indians games, but then you have to hook your TV up, to your mobile device, unless you
I didn't
want
know
to. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have the Major League Pass, and it's good for mobile platforms. The problem is you have to, if you have an HDMI cable and you want to hook it up to your TV, it's kind of a little bit more of a pain in the ass, but you could do that if you only, and that was $99 to watch the Indians. All right.
Oh, wow.
That's the cheapest way to watch the Indians. The cheapest way to run the Indians, Paul Dolan. The cheapest way to watch it, is through online sources.
Well,
Mr. Muhead,
could you like?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, could you like Chromecast that though from your device?
You probably, I don't know enough about that specifically. I suppose you could. I mean, I just go old school with HDMI cable. It's like, hey, set it up here and kick it on over to the TV and watch it that way. But honestly, I just got the package because, I'm used to having a big package.
And Mr. Muhead,
Yes.
for season ticket holders,
But-
they don't go to all
but
81
don't
games, do they?
Thank you. Somebody has to take Derek's place, for God's sakes. Go ahead, Stephen. I'm sorry.
Now, I was going to say, season ticket holders, they don't go to all 81 home games, do they?
In Cleveland, season ticket holders hold their heads when they see what happened in the offseason and don't show up at all, from what I've seen. It's like an empty stadium. Yeah. It's like, John Adams is like reliving. He's in the hot tub time machine. He's back in 1974 and 75. Rick Manning's in center field, and he's begging in obscurity out in the middle of nowhere, 500 feet away from home plate,
Or Brett Butler from the 80s.
Oh, God. I tried to forget it. He's a Dodger in my mind. He's not even an Indian.
We made fun of him when he was on the Giants. He made a fielding error in, I think he was playing right that day in a preseason game, and my dad yells from the right field bleachers, "Give it up, Brett! They'll send you back to Cleveland without your bags this time."
I hope the people in the stadium heard him better than we just heard you. You broke up. I'm sorry.
Oh well.
I'm so sorry. It's not my fault.
I'll when my computer goes dead,
It's going.
I'll type it in the other chat.
No, it's going right now. So beware the bear. So at any rate, I think the Browns have a situation that if they can get an impact player, whether it's a safety or a cornerback, by moving up, they're going to do it, because now is the time to win. We have enough pieces on the roster right now to be thoroughly competitive with the other teams in our division, and we should have a methodology to make it to the playoffs. It's real simple. I mean, this doesn't take, Einsteinian theory, and to sit there and just say, oh, we're just going to get more bodies. At this point, it doesn't make sense. If somebody can help get you over the top this year, do it, because you have a young quarterback, and if you keep him healthy, the other teams aren't going to catch up real quick, because Roethlisberger is going to be gone soon enough, and the Steelers will take a backward step when he's gone. He's the glue that holds whatever's left together, and there's no guarantee that Lamar Jackson is either going to be healthy or is going to be successful. And Cincinnati, Dalton has never led them anywhere. So, and Cincinnati's got a whole new coaching staff and all that stuff. So it could be a while till somebody really stands up to the Browns. So you build your team up as best you can now, figuring to yourself, if you win, you're not going to get the greatest pick going forward. You're not going to get big time players through the draft. You're going to have to pick and choose wisely for whatever position you get. And you might be in the 20s, and you're going to have to really pick and choose carefully. But this year, to make your move, man, it's wide open. We start out with the Titans, and the Titans are a team that, they don't score a whole lot of points. I mean, you're looking at an eminently winnable football game.
Yep. You guys match up well against them too.
And it would be Marcus Mariota is a guy who's a kind of a possession quarterback. If you get him off the field and you bring your offense to bear against this team, if you can get ahead of them, Mariota is not the guy who's going to put a lot of points on the board quickly. If your air raid offense can be effective, if you can boost your defense up one more step by getting a better pass coverage cornerback or an enforcer safety, and I think the cornerback is a better shot than a safety at this point based on the strength of the draft. You get the ball out of Mariota's hands and time of possession off the plate as far as being a deciding factor in that game. The Browns win that football game, and I have that as a W. It's also the Browns don't win season openers, folks. It sets the table. If the Browns come out in First Energy Stadium and they defeat the Tennessee Titans, it makes a huge difference because then some of the hype will become reality.
And then you go to the New York Jets the following week. I could see a pretty good 2-0 start before you play the battle-tested Rams and the Ravens.
Yeah, and again, with the Jets, it's a nice matchup because of, Darnold and Mayfield. And then you have Le'Veon Bell becoming a Jet. It's a Monday night game. And I do want to tell people that it's going to change my plans tremendously because I have to do halftime and post-game shows. I'm going to be doing post-game shows at 11:30 at night, but I'm going to do them.
Okay. I'm
going to do them because this team, all I ever asked is that the team became competitive. If it were another Hugh Jackson season, I would not do it. I would not stay up and get myself all adrenalized saying to hire a sniper and shoot Hugh from the top of the stadium. I mean, I wouldn't do that.
I don't even think you would even bother watching the Monday night game. You would just catch the highlights.
But now it's a different story. I mean, this is the real deal. But I mean, you take a team like the Jets and you put pressure on Sam Darnold and he's a different quarterback and not for the better. So this is a winnable game. It's a road game, but it's a winnable game. You come back to Cleveland to play the Rams. And of course, everyone knows the Rams are really good. This could become a prove-it game. Week 3, if the Browns were to go 1-1, win at home, lose on the road, people would say, well, they're not over the top yet. You hold on to your home field advantage and you beat the Rams, then you're a contender. You're automatically a contender if you go head-to-head with this team and you win. I mean, so if you remember the last time we had a chance at a quarterback, it was either going to be Jared Goff or it was going to be Carson Wentz, and that the Rams moved up and got Goff 1, and the Browns moved away from number 2 to take number 8. And that's how Wentz became an Eagle. And the bottom line is this. I think the Rams are a good football team. But with the whole world watching on Sunday night, that's prove-it week for the Cleveland Browns. All the focus is going to be on Cleveland, where the game's played. That's a huge season turner. Because then we have to play at Baltimore. And we know from experience it is not easy winning on the road in our division, period.
Then you got to travel West Coast to the Bay in San Francisco.
And that is a real question mark. I mean, you've got Garoppolo, who was 5-0 to finish out the season, but Garoppolo is not a certainty. He got off to a great conclusion last year, and I think that that they are perceived as a team that might be upwardly mobile. But if you look at the recent history of the 49ers, they've sucked the big moose.
Yeah.
So again, if the Browns are all that and improved, even though it's, Monday night, week 5, that's 2 Monday night games in 5 weeks, and I'll be up again late. The 49ers is not an unwinnable game. All road games are difficult. The Seahawks are week 6, but thank God we're not going there. That's probably the hardest place I know to win. That place gets so loud, it's crazy. But at least they're coming to Cleveland. The only good news is Russell Wilson gets better as the season progresses. That is a historical fact. Maybe week 6 is a little early and we can catch them, but that's a tough game any way you look at it. Then we have to go to New England. This is the part of the season where things could go bad for the Browns, weeks 5, 6, and 7. When you're on the road in San Francisco, you have to play Russell Wilson, then you got to play, Tom Brady. So that's tough.
Because really after New England, the gauntlet gets just slightly bit easier, at Denver, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Dolphins, Bengals twice, Cardinals.
Well, right now the Broncos, Horsemouth, Elway, is banking on Joe Flacco. And boy, that's a reach. That's a reach. But Denver's a tough place to play because of the elevation. You got to play a lot of linemen. You got to play a lot of men. You're not acclimated to that environment. It's tough. Tough place to win. So that's week 9 at the Broncos. And of course, the Browns don't have good success against this franchise. That would be, all-time record of 6-23. That's not good. We come back home and we play the other quarterback that we didn't take, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And look, the Bills are improved. But I have no belief that Josh Allen is an accurate throwing quarterback. Is he Derek Anderson? He doesn't throw as many picks. But who knows if he finds himself behind in games, how many he might throw, because he's got a huge arm, but it's not accurate. That's a winnable game in Cleveland for sure. For sure. So far, up to this point in week 10, I could see the Cleveland Browns 7-3, 6-4. Up to this point. Then we stay home and we play the Steelers. Got to beat the Steelers one time. It would be in Cleveland if you're going to do it. And there will be some juice in this game. And you don't know what Roethlisberger is going to be like and what physical condition he's going to be in by week 11. This you don't know. But I'm calling this a win, which means the Browns would either be 8-3 or 7-4 at this point. Again, we're at home. And we play the Miami Dolphins. And quite honestly, Adam Gase is gone. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is your starting quarterback. Flip a coin, folks. If it's 300-yard plus Ryan Fitzpatrick, you might lose. But if it's the Ryan Fitzpatrick who plays the majority of the back end of the season like a piece of shit, that's a win. I mean, that's the bottom line. He starts out the season's great. Then it's like the defense to say, wait a minute, that's Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then they just...
So weeks 1 through 4, if you were scheduled against Miami, you look on there and you see Fitzpatrick, you're like, oh, shit. But then it's like, after that, you're like, all right, I can beat that.
You know who he reminds me of? Ryan Fitzpatrick reminds me of Kelly Holcomb, the old Browns quarterback. I know Brian remembers Kelly Holcomb. And
I remember
Jim remembers, if Jim's still with us. I'm not even looking. No, Jim split. They all split. We all scream for ice cream. But the bottom line is Holcomb was figured out. And I have that feeling about Ryan Fitzpatrick that, he ends up throwing way too many interceptions because teams have a very good idea of where he's going to go with the ball. I see week 12 as a win for the Browns. At this point, they could be 9-3 or 8-4. But at the Steelers, call it a loss. Call it a loss. Not that I want it to be, but just it's been hell. It's been hell at Heinz Field. And God forbid that a field goal should decide that game on that crappy field. We can't even have a kicker who can kick straight on a good field. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that moves us down to 9-4 or 8-5. Then at home against the Bengals, that's a win. All right. So then you're either 9-5 or 11-4, right? At the Arizona Cardinals, boy. Yeah. I got to be honest with you. Mayfield is not going to lose to Cliff Kingsbury. It ain't going to fucking happen. He don't like him. And he's going to make him pay in the worst possible way imaginable. The Cardinals have no chance to win that football game. And then versus the Ravens, and then out at Cincinnati. Week 17, the Browns in a position to make the playoffs. They'll lose week 17 at Cincinnati because they're not going to play anybody of any significance going into the playoffs. I think conservatively, the Browns should be 10-6 or 11-5 this year based on this schedule. And that schedule is the predominant reason I believe we've got to move up in the draft. We just have to do it. Yeah, you have a chance to put your foot down on somebody's neck. Now is the time. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, I was thinking between 10 and 11 wins. That sounds about right. I think you guys are going to win your division. I think 9 wins could win that division. Because I don't see Pittsburgh going in double-digit wins this year.
It would be, and the betting odds are that the Steelers and Browns are both going to win 9 games this year. But now that the schedule's out, I'm happy with this schedule. It's a fair schedule for the Cleveland Browns.
I think whoever wins the AFC North is going to land between 4th and the 3rd seed.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I hate the Patriots, I still think they're front runners to be a number 1. I mean, I hate to say it. It's just every time you bet against them, it's Bill Belichick finds a way.
Now, I mean, again, it's like Greg Popovich, right? He got them into the playoffs with, hardly an optimal situation for the Spurs, but they're still there. And that's the way I look at the Patriots, is even if with an older the Tom Brady, the real issue is somebody got to get to him, because one good hit will take him out, because he is not, when you hit that age, man, you don't have the resiliency to just bounce back up off the ground.
Yeah, so Bernard Palmer hit his knee in 2007, tore his ACL. Remember that?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's a real possibility. It's a real good opportunity for the Browns to get 2 games deep into the playoffs this year. And Dorsey is not going to let a situation pass him by where he doesn't move up if he can. I just refuse to believe that.
I could see the Browns winning their home game in the wild card and stealing a road game.
Anything is possible. Now, what they're saying about the Browns' opponents have a winning percentage of .484. That's the 23rd toughest in the NFL. That means there's only 9 tougher, 9 easier schedules in the league.
Yeah.
Only 5 of the teams they're playing made the playoffs in 2018. The only thing is Garoppolo, like we said, went 5-0 when he got back with the team healthy. The Bengals were literally nothing, and Cam Newton could barely throw the ball down the field when he came to Cleveland last year. So it all depends when you play people. And if you play the Patriots the week after Brady gets injured, it's pretty ducky, you know? But
If Brady gets hurt, that anybody can run the table from there. Wow.
That's it. I mean, when you play somebody is more important. And the other thing is there's always the surprise teams that do better than what you would think. But still, with that said, the Browns have a very good opportunity here. And if I were the Browns, I'd move up to get my secondary guy. By the way, the game with the Cleveland Indians was postponed. Most people presumed because of rain, but it was postponed for sheer boredom.
I told you, watching baseball in April is like watching paint dry.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's let it rain. That's what Eric Clapton said. I don't need to see that. Next, the 76ers, part of, you know, I haven't talked about the NBA playoffs because everything is right on track for the way the league wants it. Okay. They got a couple of good little first game, you know, upsets just to pique the fans' curiosity, but everything's going to wind up the way it winds up. But one thing that is really unnerving is Johannes Embiid. The fact that he is listed as doubtful for game 4 with a sore knee, and that these extremity injuries have cost this guy so many games. And now when it counts at the end of the year in the playoffs, he missed the last game and Philadelphia won without him, but they're not exactly playing a great team. All right, you're playing the Nets.
Inexperienced Nets.
That's right. And a Nets team that if you think that Joe Harris is going to become heroic in the playoffs, you're really shooting dope. But the fact that Embiid continues to be unhealthy does not bode well as far as the process was concerned. That could really hurt the 76ers tremendously. And it could make for kind of an easier walk for somebody in the next round of the playoffs. Because the Nets don't shoot well enough, okay? I mean, the Nets get up and down the court and they throw up a lot of three-point shots, but they have a tendency to go cold. And the 76ers just were more consistent. And Simmons had a big game. JJ Redick can shoot the basketball. Covington can shoot the basketball periodically. And if he gets hot, that hurts. You know, there's just no chance the Nets are going to win the series.
No.
So,
of course not. You sit Embiid out and you still win. Come on, man.
Yeah, obviously. That's, you know, and it's just like, I don't believe it. The Clippers beat the Golden State Warriors. Well, that's over. You know, nobody's talking shit now.
Nope.
I mean, everything's going to end up the way it's going to end up because that's the way the league is scripted.
But, you know,
Boston will be there. Boston will be there.
There are a couple surprises like Portland going up 2-0 over the Thunder and Westbrook is struggling. Plus, you got the San Antonio Spurs are up 2-1 over Denver.
Well, you know, that doesn't surprise me. And the reason is, and we talked about this before.
Yeah.
I mean, Denver is a team that lives and dies by the three-point line, and the defense tightens up in the playoffs. And you're playing a team that has a system and knows exactly how to turn up playoff-style defense to throw three-point shooting teams off balance. And a team like Denver is not going to be able to just run with impunity when more hands-on defense is tolerated and permitted. They're just going to let more contact go. So that I don't see that as a surprise. There's nothing that I see really as a surprise. Westbrook losing is not a surprise. He always does. I mean, that's no surprise. Nobody believes that the Thunder are serious to go far anyway. And it's wonderful that your guy in Houston is, Harden's having some good games, but it won't last. It never does.
I managed to go to both games, to both game 1 and 2. And Ricky Rubio said, we want James Harden to shoot. That's all we want him to do. That's what we want. And if you saw the mimes and you saw the highlights, Rubio's guarding James Harden from behind instead of in front.
Well, and not only that, I mean, when he up fakes somebody and throws a 34-footer off the backboard and it goes in, things were going well for James that night, But yeah, unfortunately, what it boils down to is when it really counts, when the pressure's on, what will he do? And he has a tendency to try to take everything on himself. He's got to use that supporting cast, and it's the only way that that's going to get done for that organization. And so far, it just hasn't happened.
Well, our team is better than last year when we picked up Kenneth Faried and Austin Rivers, and Daniel House Jr. is playing pretty good, a rookie we got. But the only difference, I still don't think we'll beat the Warriors.
No, I mean, that was really kind of interesting watching the Boogie Cousins investment go down the shitter. Quite honestly, talking about a player who devalued himself. I mean, Cousins was slow as slow could be when he came back, right? I mean, and they were just sitting him all year, figuring he'd be healthy at the end of the year, and the only reason they got him was for the playoff run. And the play that he tore his quad wasn't even a serious play. He just laid out to grab a basketball, but I don't understand how that motion tore his quadricep. He looked like he was moving stiff the whole season, that part of the season that he played. I don't think he's healthy. I don't know that he's ever going to be healthy. But I'll tell you this, he wasn't stretched out. If diving to the floor results in a torn quadricep, something ain't right.
Do you think that comes from not stretching, maybe?
That's right. I don't think he was stretched out. That's exactly right. I think coming off the bench and that kind of thing, he just kind of not doing, you'll always see K-Love and he'll always be riding the bike when he's not in the game, I don't, if somebody could fuck up a wet dream, Cousins would be the guy,
I do kind of feel bad for him, though, because he was just up and coming. Took him like 10 years to make the playoffs. And then when his team made the playoffs, he couldn't play because he was injured with the torn Achilles, and now just this added to it.
Well, Cousins, to me, is an example of a player who is time passed by quickly. Right now, we have a whole new generation of people who are more agile. I'm not saying that Cousins doesn't have skills. He does. But his attitude has always been questioned. Not the most popular guy with teammates. And he took what many people would perceive to be the easy road into Golden State to get a ring before his next free agency deal. And he just strikes me as another Derrick Rose, another guy who's just out for himself. He does not make people around him better. And the circumstances of his injury, boy, that just shouldn't happen. I watched the play over and over again, and it's like, I didn't even see a twist. I didn't see a hyperextension. I didn't see anything. He just dove after a ball onto the floor.
Yeah, Cousins kind of reminds me of a glorified Dwight Howard. Just the only difference is he can shoot from the three.
Yeah, well, and Dwight Howard was a guy who, two things. The game, because of three-point range, passed him by. And the, performance drug measure by the NBA took that massive physical advantage that he had away from him. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that LeBron James was a much bigger man before they put the performance-enhancing drugs on the shelf in the NBA.
Mhm.
LeBron trimmed down. You notice that?
Yeah.
And LeBron was never going to be a small man, but he was so big. If you remember in Miami, he was cramping on the court. You remember when he went through all that episode?
Yeah.
Well, cramping when you're bulky, I know this from tennis because tennis had no, besides Maria Sharapova, there were people who took substances to gain bulk, and one of them was creatine, which is what bodybuilders and weightlifters would use. Probably the great example of a player who did that was Mary Pierce back in the 1990s. And she bulked up. She became so big that when she tore something on the court that effectively ended her career, it was because her body was just disproportionate because of bulk and size. And creatine was the stuff that helped, and it wasn't considered an illegal substance, but it was being used by people to increase their bulk. LeBron James was cramping because his body was simply too large. And I think the plus of LeBron, trimming down was that he got some of his hops and his quickness back. But what people will tell you about performance enhancing drugs, and this was part of the biggest part of the baseball story, especially with McGwire. People said, well, the reason he hit 70 home runs was blah, 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 blah.
Roids.
Roids, but they said it was his bat speed. But it really wasn't his bat speed because a smaller Mark McGwire always hit home runs at the same pace, but he could never stay healthy for a full season. You go back and you look at him before he was on the roids, and it was a home run every so many at-bats. What the roids did for him is it gave him bulk to help him withstand injuries, to stay healthier. You look at his career, and what the roids did is it gave him more at-bats per season, which allowed him to hit more home runs.
Oh, okay.
He was, go to, I'll even do this before I go off the air here. I mean, it is, if I spell his name right, let's go to his stats. I mean, it is really interesting because that part of performance enhancement drugs never was really discussed. They never really got into that whole thing. They said it was only to hit more home runs. Bullshit. It also allowed players to remain healthier. And I don't know why this site's not coming up. Let's go to his stats here. All right. If we're looking at the number of at-bats that this guy had in his career, games played, he started out his career back in 1987, and he played 151 games and had 557 at-bats, and he hit 49 home runs, all right? He continues to have his second year, he hits 32 home runs. His third year, he hits 33 home runs, but his number of at-bats is now dropping into the high 400s. And he's getting older. By the time the roids take full effect for this guy, 1997, by the way, he only had 174 at-bats, right? But he hit 24 home runs. He had 366 before that, and he hit 34. When he went back to over 500 at-bats with the roids, he hit 70 and 65 home runs, all right? And it was at a point in his career, I will point out why the significance. And people don't look at this from a historical perspective. In 1993, he had 84 at-bats the whole season. He had 135 the next year in 1994, and he only had 317 in 95. In 96, he had 423 at-bats, and he hit 52 home runs. But the next season, 366, and he's only playing 104, 105 games because he's hurt. So by the time 1997 comes around and he only plays 105, and then in 1997 he only plays 51 games, it's like, I better start shooting the roids. And when he does, he plays 155 and 153 games, and he hit 70 and 65 home runs. Well, it makes sense. But he would never have been able to, because the previous 6-7 seasons, he was unable to play that many games. That's what performance-enhancing drugs do for people, partially. LeBron James, to finish my point, I wanted to finish my point. LeBron James injuries, LeBron James' sudden susceptibility is a direct result of playing all the games he played with the Cavaliers, and he doesn't have that resiliency now that those particular drugs would create for an NBA player. The hardwood going up and down the floor with the mileage he has and with the sheer number of minutes that he played year after year after year, not to mention the deep runs into the playoffs year after year after year, his body can't hold up to that anymore. And that's why a quad injury turned into something that destroyed the Lakers season. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, when do you think LeBron was on steroids then?
I believe that Dwight Howard was. I believe that a lot of the players were taking performance-enhancing drugs. Yes. Yep.
And I also wanted to ask.
It wasn't illegal. It wasn't illegal in the league. Let's make it clear.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, they put the provision in. When they put the provision in was by the time that LeBron left Miami, they put the provision in that they were going to test regularly for performance-enhancing drugs. And that's when Dwight Howard never played much anymore and just collapsed into a gigantic series of injuries, and he just didn't look as powerful and dominant.
No, he got smaller too a little bit.
That's exactly right. And LeBron James thinned down. He quicked up. He wasn't that guy who was cramping, and he no longer had cramping problems on the court either. So, yeah, I think that he was taking it, but it was not illegal. It's not like, baseball was really kind of crapped up by that whole thing. But no, in the NBA, it was legal until I want to say it was like 2013.
What made them crack down? What made them crack down on it? Because they didn't receive that kind of pressure like MLB did. In MLB, they were pressured to.
Let me see. NBA bans PEDs. I really,
Is creatinine considered a performance enhancing drug?
Yeah, I mean that's what they were utilizing, and I don't know if that's on the list. That's what Mary Pierce was taking on the professional women's tennis tour to bulk up.
And doesn't that have some of the same side effects as steroids?
Yeah, it's not a good thing to take. Let's put it that way. And cramping would be one of the smaller problems that it would create. But that was the stuff that, when you saw those Joe Weider commercials for weightlifters,
Yes, because when these guys got smaller, you can tell it was a significant difference. It wasn't like, oh, I shedded 5 pounds. LeBron said, oh, I dropped my carbs. I lost 20 pounds. And I'm like, are you sure? Because you look like you lost all your muscle mass there. Wasn't no 20 pounds.
Yeah. Well, LeBron they said he was 6'8" and 260 pounds. And I believe he was up to like 280. He was huge. He was huge in a way that video game characters are huge,
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, I think that,
who looked bulky? Roger Clemens at 40. Did you see him when he was on roids?
Yeah. Well, just like Jim Thome. You see that Jim Thome come up to the Indians when he's, in 1993, 94, 95, and he's this scrawny guy. And then all of a sudden, man, he looks like his fucking statue. I mean, yeah, It
Yeah,
definitely makes people huge.
Remember when Roger Clemens had that trial and then Andy Pettit testified against him and said, yeah, it's true, we were on it, and they tried to get him for perjury. And when they asked Roger, hey, how did you get so bulky after the age of 33? Because now that you're 38, 39, all of a sudden you gain muscle mass. I said, oh, it just came naturally. Bullshit. You're
Yeah.
on steroids.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what year. Maybe somebody in the chat room or after the fact of this program can say when they really cracked down. It really had to do with the collective bargaining agreement and that they were going to test. It wasn't so much that these things were legal or illegal. It was that they weren't testing, so it was de facto legal. Because if they're not testing, they're not looking for anything. So if they're going to look the other way, you do what you have to do. But once that changed, and all you have to do is take a look at Dwight Howard's, careening career.
Mr. Moorhead,
Yeah.
I go to LA Fitness, and a lot of these guys are on steroids too. They're like all buff up, and they got like muscles this huge, like Scott Steiner, and they're in the gym, and they're.
Yeah, I mean it's but again, I don't know in the end that for a basketball player, I think durability is the huge factor in all of this. And to me, basketball has always been, football is the most violent game. But the breakneck pace of the NBA, if you're LeBron James playing 36, 37 minutes a night, and you have 82 games, and it's all being played not on a grass turf, but on a hardwood floor, and so much of the game is predicated on verticality and jumping and landing, and so that your joints, your ankles, and your knees are being subjected to incredible force. That building up that kind of strength would make sense to keep yourself more resistant to injuries. It's a brutal game going up and down the floor, and that's why. You're looking at a lot of players today whose careers are shortened. I mean, if you go back in time and you look at guys like Karl Malone and John Stockton from the Jazz, those guys had long freaking careers. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I mean, he played till he was 40. People have really long careers. Today, the guys who are the real bullets, the fast guys in the league, they don't have long careers, not like guys used to. Yeah.
And they said Malone and Stockton played 82 games together for like 15 years in a row without missing a game. They didn't miss not one game.
Yeah, they half court sets and pick and rolls. That was the drill for the Utah Jazz.
Do you think the three ball? I know steroids played a part, but do you think the three ball sort of causes more injuries? Because these guys are literally running up and down the court.
Yeah, I mean, what's happened? What's happened is players don't follow their own shot anymore. I don't know if you notice this, but a guy will chuck up a three and they immediately backpedal to try to prevent the fast break going the other way because the whole game is predicated now upon turning misses into transition points and not letting defenses get their feet set. So it's like a Chinese fire drill. It is nonstop motion. And from the second the shot is missed and then rebounded, and then people release to the other end of the floor, it's up and down.
And Mr. Moohead, a lot of and I noticed a lot of these open layups that some of these players can do, they'll pass it up and pass it to the guy who's covered at the 3-point line to take the three instead of getting the easy two. Ricky Rubio did that 4 times in the Rockets game. He'll run around Harden because Harden don't play defense. He's going for the layup. I'm like, well, there's 2 points. Instead, he throws it back out, and the guy's 3-point. I'm like, what did you do? You just cost yourself 2 points.
Yeah, but the history on Rubio is there's a better chance of somebody throwing the ball in from outside the arena than for Rubio to make a shot. So
do you notice a lot of players are passing up on the open layup to get the extra point?
Well, that's the whole idea of why the Lakers failed is because LeBron James plays a drive and kick game. LeBron will finish at the rim if he gets around his man, but if you suck another man in, he'll find somebody open on the wing. If you look at all the years, you look at guys like Ray Allen, the guys who surrounded LeBron James throughout his career, who really were spot-up shooters, and that LeBron was still able to drag somebody like Kyle Korver into the finals, right? Because having people who are dead-eye shooters from behind the line, the drive and kick has become, again, part of the game. The problem is that when a guy is driving into the paint and throws it to a guy who's behind the line and he misses that shot, the guy who misses the shot can't follow his own. The guard who's thrown the ball is going in the wrong direction, and that automatically opens a fast break up the other way, up the court. So, yeah, and I think the league likes it because it's a more spirited, active game, but it's harder on the players, and it shortens careers.
It's the first 150 points wins, and sometimes I don't like that because it just shows you there's no defense. It just comes down to the last play. Who has the final shot either goes in or goes out, because the whole game is just I score, you score, I score, you score. There's no defense.
It's kind of like the All-Star game, and it's the regular season games have taken on more of that kind of look. I don't mind it one way or the other. It's the way the game's played today, but I think that it will contribute to shorter careers.
But didn't the 90-88 final scores in the 90s seem more meaningful than the 130-127 you see today?
To be a game that's close in the end, that's decided by a final shot, whether there's defense or not, it doesn't really matter to me. If it gets to a close end, the thing that's really disturbing to me is how many large leads are lost, because when, teams are up by 22 points and blowing 22-point leads because they continue to play at that frenetic pace, there isn't a notion that you can use the clock to your advantage. You just keep playing the same way.
Mr. Moonhead, they're literally not running the clock down. Like, you could be up by like 5 points with a minute left, and instead of running it down to 2 and shooting it like they did in the 90s, these guys will run it down to 20 and throw it up. Like, what are you doing? You're just giving them the ball back.
Yeah, and the whole the rage of the league are 2-for-1s at the end of quarters. So, I mean, if you have to throw up a 40-foot shot in order to get, a 2-for-1, teams are doing it. It's all about the number of possessions, and that generates the number of scoring opportunities. That's the metrics in place for the NBA. That's the way it is.
Oh, Mr. Moonhead, who do you got to win tonight out of Toronto at Orlando, game 3 in Orlando?
I'll tell you something. If Toronto goes in and loses that game, boy, it's going to be bad vibes for that whole organization. And Dwayne Casey will be nodding his head, going, yeah, right. And I took the heat for that. They need to have a big game, and the Orlando Magic are not that good a team. I mean,
so you got Toronto to come over tonight?
Toronto has to win that game. I mean, I can't see them losing that game.
Oh, yeah. Also, the later game is Portland at Thunder. Does Thunder win this game and make it 2-1, or does Portland go up 3-0?
I kind of think that they're going to win one, that the Thunder are going to win this one. And but from there, the real question is whether some of these teams like Portland can win the important game. And I think that was like what we were asking about the Nets. They pulled off that big upset, and then all of a sudden, when it really mattered, playing in front of their home crowd, they went dead cold in the third quarter and just lost it all. That's what I wonder is what's going to happen, in the Raptors game. I wonder if that the Raptors will probably run over them.
Westbrook stuck his foot in his mouth by saying that they were going to sweep Portland.
No. If I were him, I wouldn't be talking at all this time of the season. That's what I know. I better get the hell out of here at 7:14. Okay. Everybody have a happy Easter, by the way, and thank you for joining me. Stephen and Brian, and earlier Jim and Roxanne. Thanks everybody for jumping in and helping. And we'll be back again come Monday. We'll be talking more about this stuff. So thanks for tuning in, and until next time, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.